Hello, my name is Willie Black, and I'm here with two very good-looking women this morning. Nancy Carter, who's a member of the Select Board and also the Selectman representative to the Planning Board, and to Kelly Dent. Is that the correct name?
Yes, that is.
Okay. Who's a member of the Vice Chairman of the Planning Board, and we're here to discuss the ordinances that are going to be voted on in this year's town meeting.
The current ordinance, Willie, had its origins back in 1976. It's been amended and added to many times over the years. And the result of this evolution has resulted in topics being scattered throughout the document. Things are hard to find. Others have become obsolete or have internal consistencies. A good example, Willie, is for instance, driveways, and you'll pardon me if I read this exactly, because in doing so, it'll give you a sense of our challenge. The ordinance is fairly comprehensive section on driveways. However, that is buried in an article that creates zoning districts under accessory uses 210, and hence driveways don't even appear in the table of contents. Obviously, driveways are important to all of our citizens. However, the provision for the location of driveways appears in section 309 in the general provisions article, and further, restraints on driveways are not found elsewhere, but in section 902, definitions. So you can understand our challenge. 2 years ago, the Planning Board agreed it was time to reorganize the ordinance and make it more user-friendly for Hanover residents.
Okay, let me throw in a curve here. Where do people find this ordinance so that they know what you're talking about?
On the website, Town of Hanover.
Town of Hanover website.
Yes.
Okay. Are you going to reorganize or rewrite this?
Our intention has, from the very beginning, been merely to create a document that is easier to understand and does not, than the current ordinance, and does not in any way change the meaning or the content of our current ordinance.
Well, how are you sure that you're going to keep the meaning and content the same if you're rewriting the whole thing? How is the citizen going to know what's going on?
The board divided off into two teams, the drafting team and the proofreading team. The drafting team first printed up a copy of the existing ordinance and then literally cut up the printed pages into sections. The team then took all these sections, laid them out on a table, and reorganized them into the proposed new order. The drafting team was careful to make sure that nothing was left on the cutting room floor. The same reordering was then done with the electronic version, cutting and pasting, and the whole then critically reviewed line by line. Now, the drafting team did rewrite parts of the ordinance with the intention of improving the language, bringing consistency, and correcting provisions that the team thought were just plain wrong.
So there are actually changes in what's happening.
Yes.
You've rewritten some of it.
Yes, there were changes to the document, and that's where the proofreading team stepped in. Working in pairs, the proofreaders reviewed the entire document, and one person read the proposed new version aloud, while the second person marked off every place in the current ordinance where words were omitted, added, deleted, imported from another section, or just plain changed. Every difference in content between the two versions was listed in a table, and there were 250 changes in all. Wow. Over the course of several meetings of the Planning Board, all 250 changes were discussed. Many of the changes were agreed to be simple grammatical clarifications or improvements, and some of the pieces of text, it was agreed, were better placed in a different section of the ordinance. In the end, the board was able to whittle down the number of substantive changes to around 30.
Wow. And how do you know if the change was substantive?
Well, Willie, what we did was we applied two tests. The first thing we did was say, if this change is allowed to stand, would I be allowed to do to my land yesterday, what I can do tomorrow? Or vice versa, the other side of the coin, my neighbor, could they do with their land tomorrow something that they cannot do today? So in either case, if the answer was ever yes, we decided that the change was indeed substantial.
So what happened if these changes were substantial?
Well,
How does the citizen know?
so I tell you, for the majority of those changes, the board either agreed to further change in the wording so that the original meaning was retained, or we simply reverted to the exact wording as it now exists in the ordinance. So after we did that, we were left with 5 changes that the board has deemed are going to be substantial.
So how are you going to deal with these 5 changes?
We'll put those to the voters, to our Hanover voters, on town meeting day, May 10th.
Well, looking at the warrant for the town meeting, the section on the ballot for the zoning ordinances looks quite long. Can you explain how it works?
Yes, I can.
Good.
The voters are asked if they favor adopting each of the amendments to the zoning ordinance one by Australian ballot. The first amendment is the completely reorganized and renumbered zoning ordinance. Amendments 2 through 6 are the changes that the board judged to be substantial, and the citizens are asked if they favor each of these proposed changes.
Yes, a vote on Amendment 1 will approve that the organized zoning will approve the reorganized zoning amendment. What happens if the voters do not approve this amendment?
If the board's proposal is not approved by majority vote, then we shall continue to use the ordinance currently in effect.
Okay.
And amendments 2 through 6, if the reorganized zoning ordinance, which is Amendment 1, is approved, but any of the amendments 2 through 6 are not approved, then the wording in the current ordinance for that provision will be used instead in the reorganized ordinance. Now, this is where it gets tricky. If Amendment 1 is not approved, we will continue to use the current ordinance structure and will incorporate the wording of any amendments 2 through 6 that are approved by the voters.
I believe there are 13 more amendments that set up for approval for the voters. You've discussed the first 6. What happens to the next 7?
Well, that's true, because ever since zoning was first adopted, and the amendments brought to town vote, as I mentioned in 1976, there have been over 200 in the past 40 years. These amendments arise, Willie, either at the planning office through the zoning administrator or through citizens coming before the planning board and proposing amendments. This year there are 5 such amendments, numbers 7 through 11, that the board has voted to approve and put on the town warrant. Number 7, for example, deals with the definition of outdoor recreation and allows a wider array of structures to be put in place to support such activities, however, only with the approval of the zoning board.
Now, Amendment 8 addresses the regulation of signs. The changes have been in response to a U.S. Supreme Court decision. I expect towns all over New Hampshire and, in fact, across the country are having to revise their ordinances that regulate signs as a result of the court's ruling. Amendment 9 deals with a change in the limitations on building height in the institutional district adjacent to the general residential district in the vicinity of West Wheelock Street.
Well, I hear that Dartmouth College has asked for a change so that they can build an addition to Thayer Engineering School and a parking garage and realign the Engineering Drive access from West Street. Has the board approved this?
The amendment that appears on the ballot has been scaled back by the college from the original proposal based on public comment. The college is no longer seeking a change in the boundary of the institutional district that, if approved, would have led to the construction of a parking garage along the edge of West Wheelock Street. The planning board supports the more limited zoning amendment that allows for smaller side and rear setbacks for buildings in the institutional district adjoining the residential district on West Wheelock Street. And this also allows for greater building height in the area. And the planning board has seen the proposed location for the Thayer building addition, but the zoning amendment, if approved, does not, and let me repeat, does not allow the college the automatic go-ahead to build the Thayer addition or to realign the road. If the college wishes to proceed with construction, it will have to submit a full set of plans, which will be very closely considered by the planning board at a public meeting.
Amendment 10, Willie, addresses the creation of a new lot with land that lies in 2 different zoning districts. And then Amendment 11 allows for Hanover-specific language to existing state law that regulates construction in and around cemeteries.
Oh my, all kinds of changes. Well, are people planning to build next to cemeteries and disturb people? And
No, but we do have a distinct challenge in Hanover with the, as you know, the I'm going to call it the colonial era cemetery that exists right in the center of town, and that does
there's a
present
cemetery? Oh, yeah, there is.
Yes, ma'am, rather
Yes, there
large, with a
is.
lot of Hanover's founders residing there.
And they're all hidden behind Dartmouth College. So.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
I understand the last 2 amendments that citizens will vote on are petitioned amendments. Can you explain that to me?
Yes, the state law here in New Hampshire provides for citizens to petition for changes in the zoning ordinance. The petition has to define the changes they seek and be accompanied by 25 signatures of legal voters. There are 2 petitioned amendments this year. The Amendment 12 asks for a change in the way in which building height is measured in single resident and general resident districts. And Amendment 13 seeks to change the rule that limits the expansion of a building associated with non-conforming uses. The current zoning permits an increase of up to 20% of the building floor area, and the petitioner seeks for the limit to be raised to 65%. All properly petitioned warrants are all petitioned amendments are added to the warrant automatically. The planning board is required by law to inform the public if it approves or disapproves of each. After a hearing and given its full consideration of these amendments this year, the board voted to disapprove both.
So where can citizens find more information about these amendments?
The wording of all of the proposed amendments is available in the town annual report, which is available online through the town's website or in printed form, either at the town offices and the Howe and Etna libraries.
Wow. Looks like the
Indeed.
planning
Yes,
board's
it
been
was.
doing their homework all year, and good for them.
For 2 years.
And people have to understand that the planning board members are all just volunteers. They give hours and hours of time for the town, and hopefully the voters will support them. Thank you very much, Nancy and Kelly, for coming, and
you.
good luck on the voting.
You're welcome. Appreciate your support, Willie.
Thank you so much.